Uh, Here's some questions. I want to start with some questions. A good question is more important than some kind of superficial answer. So here's a string of questions that'll lead us to the beginning of an answer. Why Gaza? Why Ukraine and Sudan? Why millions of refugees all over the planet moving for safety? Why, in the wealthiest country ever, are so many people poor here in the United States? Lacking food, lacking shelter, lacking health care. So many people cannot see a doctor when they're sick. In this country, the wealthiest country ever. Why? Why is our president-elect seriously talking about annexing Canada and Greenland and taking back the Panama Canal? I want to put the screensaver up. Some of you came in after it, but it's sort of yeah, I got to minimize this for a minute. It sort of sets the scene here. Let me share it. And then for our people watching this later online, this was our screensaver coming in. I was playing around with this one. Well, the title of this, Varieties of Spiritual Experience, is playing off of the varieties of religious experience. William James is really, it's a bunch of lectures he gave at Harvard in the I think, 1905. And it's still a great read because he was merging in this psychology and spirituality. He called it the religious experience. We're dealing with spiritual experience in this group. We don't have uh, it's not a religious group, it's a spiritual group. And So I was playing on that. But here's two looks about how to think about greatness. There is a map going around on the internet, et cetera, of president-elect's vision of not just making America great again, but making it greater. And that involves annexing Canada and Greenland and then taking back the Panama Canal. So there's one view of greatness. And then this icon here that I got from Jim Flynn, who was he's just a lifelong activist and Catholic priest in Louisville. That's another vision of greatness. Which America would you like? Which America is possible? Yeah, and then you can not just America, but we're talking about the world, an image for the world. And they're very different images, okay? And there's a reason for that. And we're going to look at the reason why people see things so differently, what they think would be great. Shouldn't surprise you that, I go with the icon to the right, that this is what I think the greatness of any country can be. It can give. I love this icon because it's a woman as representing God or the spirit, and in her cloak, she's giving shelter to all kinds of people. It's a beautiful icon, I think, of what this country could be. It can make this country greater. And then the other version, which is, take some more territory, take some more territory. Oh, gee, there's a lot of minerals in Greenland, by the way, that everybody wants, including the Chinese. And so these are two levels of reality, just like the symbolism of Epiphany is these three wise men come from the East and they see through the mundane, sort of shabby thing in the stable, and they see something deeper, something greater than what the appearance was. And so we're always dealing with appearance and reality. That's part of the spiritual journey. So I'm going to take this off. You've just seen it. Yeah. Okay. Well, uh, so the answer to all those questions would be something we've talked about, but it's something that's critical that you have to factor into your understanding of why the world is the way it is. And it's 7 words that you ought to like somehow tattoo on your heart. Uh, it's on mine. How you see is what you see. How you see is what you see. And that's involving cognitive development. The seeing there is just perception, but it's more than that. It's like a pair of glasses. If you put on rose-colored glasses, the world looks different. If you put on sort of funny glasses, it could be all distorted. Uh, how you see is what you see, and what the wise men saw symbolically was something deeper. You see. So people say, uh, uh, "How can people see X as a suitable leader for the planet?" Whether it was Trump or Kamala. People so they just couldn't see it. They say, "Oh yeah, I want this guy. Yeah, I want her." And so how can it's a very there was a stark difference in the visions that they had. But how you see is what you see. Uh, and so the ultimate solution uh, to those questions that we asked in the beginning, pick any one of them you want. Why Gaza? Why people still don't have health care in this country? You have to look deeper than, it's not money. We have plenty of money to do it. Other almost almost every other modern country has done it. Uh, no, you have to look deeper. And so we're going to go on. This is just a bit of a introduction to the Dancing with Spirit next Saturday, where I'm really going to plunge into it. But we're going to start looking at specifically at the evolution of consciousness. Because your stage of consciousness is your set of glasses. And I want to just sketch this out a little bit and give you a couple short poems. And then, one thing that's been a mainstay is after some words, we all go into the silence. And that's, whatever your form of practice for waking up, you know, the wise men were woke. I'm sorry to tell all you people and all you religious fundamentalists, wherever you are, the wise men were woke. That's what this day is all about. They maybe were more woke than the people around there who were just hanging out and just saw a baby in a manger and with a bunch of cows around. If that actually happened, you got to take it on the deepest level. The wise men were this sense of a consciousness at a deeper level. So we practice when we go in for our 20 minutes, and what you could be doing centering prayer, you could be doing Buddhist meditation, you could be doing Taoist meditation. It does, those are the various practices, but they're all going at the same thing there. That one is waking up, and that's huge in terms of the evolution of consciousness. But we're going to spend some time talking about growing up. Because you can have a peak experience of the oneness of the world uh, at any structural stage of consciousness, and it will look very different. Just one example, Ram Dass, who a lot of you know, Richard Alpert, as it became spiritually Ram Dass. Well, Ram Dass was about as deep as you could get into waking up and doing the practices. His brother was in a psychiatric clinic. He also had a waking up experience, but it was on a totally different level. He felt that he was Jesus and you weren't, and Ram Dass couldn't really help him because he was on it. It was levels of consciousness like this. They both had a waking up kind of experience to an actual experience of the oneness of everything, but they were on different cognitive levels. And so it interpreted it differently. So we're going to talk much more about waking up. But this is part of the evolution of consciousness. Waking up and growing up are the two big things. We're also going to go on to talk to understand what cleaning up might be. Those three will take you a long way on this pilgrimage, this evolution of consciousness. And that's what we need on this planet. Everybody meditating won't do it. It'd be a road, it'd be a start, but we have to grow up in terms of our cognitive development on the inside too. And that's why you can't really see it. It's hard to get. So evolution of consciousness is achingly slow work. Some of you know this already, uh, but it is speeding up greatly at the same time. So there's two things that seem to be like at odds, but it's true. Consciousness evolves very slowly, but in the last 300 years or so, it's like vaulting along. Well, I'll give you just a little basic timeline. About 300,000 years ago, people like us, Homo sapiens, I call us Homo amnesians, but people like us physically with all the hardware and the brain, and we're on the planet. Well, it was only about 30,000 years ago. So look at that expanse, 270,000 years, give or take. These are all ballpark figures. Only about 30,000 years ago that shamans and all the kind of indigenous religions all over the six continents that we know of start having these waking up experiences. And we're actually all in all these continents, they all went into caves and put a record of them on the wall. It was about 30,000 years ago, give or take 10 or 20,000 years. When you're talking about 300,000 years, we're not too precise, but that was a long time where we were just living in hunters and gatherers and bands, and maybe we had some feelings of oneness with nature, probably because that's where we were. But it wasn't anything like what appeared 30,000 years ago. And then 10,000 years ago, so another 20,000 years, and you have from these breakthrough waking up experiences, you have the major religions we talk about now were born somewhere anywhere from 10,000 years ago upwards. So they were born there. So that's actually, from we're starting to race along now. We're growing up. And then about 1700 years ago, science breaks through. We have and I want to talk about this breakthrough today. This is what they call the age of reason in the scientific revolution, 1700s. It's also where, this country was born, and then France and, democracies. That was all part of that movement. It came from science and reason. And then just really over 100, just 100 years ago, so much, in the early 20th century, psychology started developing. This a real inner science of this cognitive development, very recent. Freud was seen as sort of an outlier, when he came through, and Jung, and then you got William James writing about psychology and spirituality, how they influence one another. Spirituality, the spirituality is about the waking up, and the psychology is about the growing up. These stages of growth, it's like different pairs of glasses. You're looking at the same world, and the world is not just perception. It's just not what you perceive. It's also what you conceive. You see how you conceive it. So it's really speeding along. It seems like we've been dealing with war and all this kind of but let's just look at what happened in the 18th century. This was the beginning of what you call the modern world, as opposed to the medieval world. Modernity began in the 18th century with the reason became paramount, and then science was found and developed. It's called the scientific revolution. And then in just in a matter of, in terms of consciousness, in 300,000 years, it was like this. All of a sudden, the cultural center of gravity in the West, at least, began to shift to reason. That's why people had slaves all that time. St. Paul talks about slaves, be subservient to your masters. In Jesus's time, people had slaves. Uh, all the way up till the 17th, 18th century, slavery was okay. We're all in all the religions. But then somehow when reason struck, the idea of slavery, the fact that one person could own another person, became intolerable. And that was the beginning of any kind of feeling of universal human rights. There was the thing of the rights of man coming out of the French Revolution. So that's rarely fairly recent. And so that was brilliant. And then, science gave us Zoom. Here we are. We can communicate and so much more. You can turn your temperature up a little bit. You don't have to just throw logs on the fire, which we're burning on the other side. Uh, so it's brilliant. It's brilliant. And it's sped everything up. Now, the real fly in the ointment of modernity and of the scientific revolution was that they tossed religion out. When Nietzsche said God is dead, uh, that was even misunderstood because he didn't think God was dead. He thought a certain version of the spirit was dead. We tossed out religion, but we also tossed out all thoughts of the spirit. And then modernism was scientific. It was rational. Not everybody, of course, not the most people, but the movement and the educators and the politicians and the cultural icons were all moving in. So the center of gravity was there. And now people talk about where we are now as postmodernism. By this time, the religion is scientific materialism. It's just, or scientism sometimes they call it, another ism comes in. And it's just like, unless you can weigh it, measure it somehow, and then you can photograph it or see it, unless it's material reality, nothing exists but that. And these old patterns that connected people to something bigger have sort of disappeared. And it's not the guys bringing opioids over the Mexican border that has got all these teenagers and young people doing opioids. It's the lack of a pattern of meaning. When they threw out uh, the religions wholesale, uh, they threw out the patterns of meaning, and what is replaced it. I think so. That's sort of the downside of the fly in the ointment of modernity and all this great progress is we tossed out any kind of pattern. I mean, who can understand what's going on now just based in viewing science? It's why there's such a battle over science even in this culture, because the center of gravity might be there, but the majority of people in our culture uh, don't believe in science. And we're going to explain this, nitty gritty, like in the future weeks, but uh, that just brings you up to date. But to go back just to the big picture, we're talking about the evolution of consciousness. And, this group, if it means nothing else to me, it is that we get together as a community and we practice waking up, but we're also going to learn how to practice growing up and cleaning up. Yeah, there's plenty to clean up. Well, here's a couple of short poems, and then we'll actually get to just practicing some waking up. But these are just some things to think about. If you want the notes always, you can just send me an email at looseleafhollow@gmail.com and I'll send you the notes. Most of you know that. Two poems, short ones. This one is called The Postmodern Dead End. We are at a kind of dead end in believing in, in where reason can take us and where science can take us. We're going into AI now and all that stuff. Fine, but it's a kind of dead end. So this is just a short little poem, 25 words or less on what I call the postmodern dead end. Unless you're rich, life's a bitch. Unless you're rich, life's a bitch. So grab for all the gusto and comfort you can buy. Unless you're rich, life's a bitch. So grab for all the gusto and comfort you can buy. But be ye billionaires or unhoused, you will die. That's the postmodern dead end. Unless you're rich, life's a bitch. So grab for all the gusto and comfort you can buy, but be ye billionaire or unhoused, you will die. Because when you have a postmodern outlook, there's nothing but matter, and there's a big question. There's of is there anything else but what you can see with the senses? Yeah, and if you really go with this postmodern thing, no, and grab for all the gusto you can get and the comfort you can buy during this life because we're all gonna die. No one gets out of here alive, and there's nothing else. Well, that's a view. Okay, I think it's kind of a dead end myself. I think a lot of young people, a lot of people in this culture think it's a dead end too. It's a little hard to live with that. And so some medication could help and does help for a while. Take your mind off that. Now, this is another view. Like I said, varieties of view here. I call this a pilgrimage of love. And I sort of got the image from Dave Reuter last week, Brother Dave. He said, well, this now coming into the now is really a kind of pilgrimage, isn't it? And so this poem spun out. Thanks for that image, Dave. It's called a pilgrimage of love. It's quite a different journey. I felt the need of a great pilgrimage. So I sat still in the silence for 50 years, and love came to me as my true self, as wholehearted awareness. First, there is a mountain, then there is no mountain, and then there is only freedom and fullness in the one taste of love melting into love. Felt the need of a great pilgrimage, so I sat still in the silence for 50 years, and love came to me as my true self, as wholehearted awareness. Well, first there is a mountain, then there is no mountain, and then there is only freedom and fullness in the one taste of love melting into love. Yeah, both these poems will be in the Monday mail out, and so I think that's enough for now. Just to end with that.